Time is running out for SEPTA and its riders when it comes to preventing deep cuts from going into effect. Bus routes from being eliminated, changes to trains, and higher prices are coming too. I'm Lauren Mayk, and on this Battleground Politics, I'm going to share what I've heard recently from riders and from lawmakers about those cuts and what's happening in Harrisburg. While SEPTA riders count down to changes, lawmakers in Harrisburg have blown past the deadline for agreeing on a budget. It's more than a month overdue, and transit funding is one of the things lawmakers have not agreed on. Let's start in Roxborough, where I spent some time here at Ridge Avenue and Domino Lane talking to SEPTA riders. This bus stop is on one of the routes that is going away. A sign here lets riders know the 35 bus route is being eliminated. Paula Hutton is a daily SEPTA rider, taking it to get back and forth to work.
Have you looked at this point to see whether the routes that you take are going to be impacted?
Yeah, I see that the 35 is going to be discontinued. So that will cut out all my options to get to work. I'll have less. And right now I have to spend an hour to be sure I'll be in work. I have to be at the bus stop an hour early now. So if it gets cut back more, the 9, it's going to be, a lot harder for me to get to work.
Is it a situation where it's just going to take more time, or are you looking at, are there other options for you?
No options. No, I'll have to walk. If there was too much time, because I have to be in work at 8 o'clock, I have to. So it will affect my job if I can't get here at 8, yeah.
We've been watching to see what's happening in Harrisburg and if SEPTA is going to get the money that it says it needs. The budget's late. It's 4 weeks late today. What would you say to folks in Harrisburg who are still trying to figure out whether they can come up with the money?
I would say that, it's going to affect Philadelphia in a really bad way if the buses are, eliminated and the trips are cut back, because it's going to affect everything, the stores, people won't be able to get into work. Some people take 3 buses to get to work, so they have to hook up all the buses, so it's going to be, people won't be able to get to work. So the stores are going to suffer, everything will suffer, yeah.
Sort of a domino effect there, yeah.
I also met Darnell Harvey.
I catch the 9 that he's on Walnut Street.
Okay.
So coming up, it's easy, but 5 o'clock in the morning, it's really going to put a damp on me because it's going to stop running on Walnut Street. I think it's going to stop at Walnut Street, it's going to start at Market. But me getting up here is going to be a challenge. It's really going to be a challenge because I live in North Philly and I work down the street. So it's going to really be a challenge. It's going to put a damp on me. And if they do the 61 doesn't stop over here. So it's really going to be hard for me.
So it's impacting you even though yours isn't completely going away.
Right.
It's just changing enough to make a difference.
Enough to make a difference. Yes, it's making a difference. It's going to make a difference for me. I'm going to have to get up earlier in the morning to get here.
How did you find out that your route was being affected?
Well, on the bus stop, when I get up in the morning, I've seen the little stops. I've seen the little stops, and I've seen they discontinuing some of the buses. And I heard that they were going to be discontinuing 50 stops. So my store knows about it. So we're basically preparing for it. I'm trying to get a little car so I can get back and forth, something that
you might actually resort to driving.
Yes, I have to resort to driving. I'm going to have to resort to driving.
That could be expensive.
It's going to be expensive, but it'll be more convenient.
Because you can leave whenever you want.
I can leave whenever I want, yeah. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch the sub and to catch the bus.
Yeah.
And you have to be on time with the bus because most of the time the buses, they're on time, but then they stop, or either they basically, if they don't have another person to drive, they discontinue the bus and then you're late. If I miss one bus, I'm late.
Are you hopeful at this point that they'll be able to sort of unwind things and put the routes back?
The funding. I wish they could get the funding so people could get back and forth to work. I hope they get the funding. I hope the city of Philadelphia helps them so they can get the funding so we can have public transportation, because it's easier in public transportation than it is in a car.
And they are really waiting on Harrisburg,
right,
on the folks
right.
at the state level,
yeah.
Some of whom are not from this area. What would you say to lawmakers maybe who aren't from this area about what the impact is going to be?
Well, basically just help us out. Help the people that has to work, that's not basically that doesn't have a car. If you don't have a car, basically we're dependent on public transportation, so we're going to need public transportation. We need SEPTA. especially when you're working out of town and you're working out of basically out of your county or in another regional. It's going to affect us. It's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect everyone. Yeah.
And you're just trying to get to work.
I'm just trying to get to work back and forth to make a living.
Let me ask you one more thing, because you said you're looking at maybe getting a car. These changes go into effect towards the end of August. I think August 24th is when they go into effect. Does that timing make a difference for you? Are you kind of like counting down to see how much time you have on that route?
Basically, I did, because I had a car. My car broke down. Now I have another car. So basically now it's pushing it. I have to push it and get it together real fast before the 24th. It does. So
you are keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye. It's putting a time limit on me. Yes, it is putting time on me. Okay. Yes, yeah. I have to get everything done before the 24th.
So where do things stand in Harrisburg, where they'll make decisions on funding for SEPTA and a lot more in that budget that was due by July 1st? I talked to a Democrat and a Republican from our area. Pennsylvania has a divided government. Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate, the governor is a Democrat. At the same time negotiations are happening, 3 Republican senators from our area are pitching a plan for more oversight for SEPTA. It calls for the bipartisan Legislative Budget and Finance Committee to review procedures and audits of SEPTA. Now, SEPTA supports the legislation and says it's already doing some things similar to what the bill calls for. I talked to one of the sponsors, Republican Senator Tracy Pennycuick, about what it would do, whether it could make people more comfortable with funding for SEPTA, and where things stand in the larger debate over money and transit.
Senator, thank you for taking some time. Let's talk about SEPTA and this bill that you are a co-sponsor on. What is your hope for what this legislation would do?
So what we want to do is we want to add some oversight and accountability to SEPTA. We are giving them right now about $700 million a year, but yet they continue to need more and more money with no visibility to the taxpayer on what that money is going to. Are they using those dollars judiciously? Are they using them the most effective way possible? Because we don't know. So what we wanted to do was just give some oversight, let the Legislative Budget Commission go in and look and see, what are you doing with the money? Where's that money going? We have some concerns. You know, they're proposing huge budget cuts. Okay, what have you done with the money we've already given you? You know, you continue to need more and more money. We know ridership is down. I hear from my constituents that they're concerned about the safety on SEPTA. They see those people that are jumping the barriers and are fare jumpers. What's happening to them? So there's a lot of concerns around SEPTA. We know that SEPTA is critical to Philadelphia. We just want to make sure that we're spending the right money in the right places and we're helping them to be successful.
Now, SEPTA does have a board, and it makes a budget, and there's documentation for that. Why is that type of documentation not good enough? Why do you need more?
Well, I'm going to give you an example. SEPTA's own Inspector General came out with a report recently about their SCOPE program, which costs $7 million a year. And that program was designed to help the homeless around SEPTA stations connect with social services. Their own internal audit showed that they couldn't substantiate the work that was being done. And when they reviewed the video, the staff wasn't doing the job. They were sitting on benches, they were on their phone, they were talking, they were smoking, but they weren't engaging with the homeless. So could we have used that $7 million somewhere else? That's kind of what we're looking at. How can we help them be successful? You know, we also had the former CEO who walked away with a $500,000 golden parachute. Was that the most effective use of taxpayer dollars? I think anyone would say, well, I'd like a golden parachute when I leave my job. Well, as a semi-public entity, that SEPTA should have been said, whoa, we're not going to pay you $500,000 for a year after you leave this employment. That's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. So it's those kind of issues that we're looking at.
Okay. When I looked at this bill, I looked at the memo first from Senator Picozzi before I actually read the legislation. And the memo has some more specifics in it. It talks about reimagining SEPTA. It talks about public-private partnerships and naming rights and sort of the potential for all these different things. But the legislation itself doesn't get into those specifics. Why did you choose to kind of to not include some of those specifics in terms of requiring benchmarks on specific things?
So we don't want to run SEPTA. We've been in long conversations with SEPTA over the last couple of months, and things like naming rights on stations, naming rights on buses, like that's an internal operational play for SEPTA. So that's kind of their end of it. What we want to do is be as helpful as possible, look at how they're doing business, but not dictate how they do business. So we kind of backed off a little. I'm a huge proponent of micro transit. I think that is such an opportunity to kind of rescue SEPTA. But I don't...
Explain what that is for folks.
So micro transit is you get to a more centralized location and then maybe take a smaller bus to a further out location. So maybe there's not as many people on a certain line. So you go to a bigger line and then you take a smaller bus to that less used location, rather than continuing to run a big bus to a location that doesn't have the ridership to justify a big bus.
It sounds like that could require additional assets, though, buying those little buses.
You're absolutely right. Or is that part of the public-private partnership where maybe that goes to a private company and
someone has them already?
Right. And it gets, subbed out. That's kind of an internal operational requirement that SEPTA needs to look at. That's not where we want to be. We want to be looking at kind of the overall aspect of SEPTA, where the money's going and what they're doing, what's working, what's not. And if it's not working, helping them to kind of say, hey guys, this isn't working. What's plan B?
Now, of course, this is all happening, against the backdrop of all of the discussions about, what will happen with SEPTA funding, transit funding statewide, the state budget. This particular bill does not have any money attached to it. Why did you decide to do it that way and not sort of say, hey, SEPTA, if you do X things, then we're going to give you X amount of money?
So they're two separate issues, believe it or not, in my opinion. We need to have the long-term oversight over what they're doing financially as a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Funding is more of a much bigger picture as far as whether it's rural roads and bridges, which is a very important part of Pennsylvania infrastructure, whether it's Pittsburgh Transit as well, Northeast Transit, Lehigh Valley Transit. It's much bigger than just SEPTA when you look at funding. So that's why we separated the two out. It's really important to recognize that SEPTA is just one piece of the transit puzzle. It's not the only piece of the puzzle. So people kind of forget that in the Southeast, but Pittsburgh also has transit, and we have a ton of roads and bridges across Pennsylvania that need addressing as well. So we've got to look at the entire infrastructure picture.
Do you think this kind of oversight, though, would help to make your colleagues in the Senate and you yourself more comfortable with giving SEPTA more money and
I do
making that investment?
So we all have a lot of confidence in LBFC. Gosh, I get that acronym wrong all the time. Sorry. And we have a lot of confidence that they're very bipartisan. They are very down to details. They are very focused on details and facts. And I think that would give a lot of confidence to my rural fellow senators that go, whoa, why are we putting all this investment in Philadelphia? I think that would give them a lot of comfort to know that a third party is looking at it, rather than me just saying, really, we need SEPTA funding. We need to make sure that, we support SEPTA. So I think that would really go a long way to making people comfortable that there is a third party looking at their operations, looking at what they're doing, and reporting back every year, not, oh gosh, we need $200 million today. I think that would go a long way. I really do.
Okay. Where are you in this? I mean, we don't know where things are going to land. We're all sort of watching Harrisburg to see where this goes next. Are you supportive of, at this point, of giving SEPTA the money it needs and investing in the transit money that the governor's proposed?
So I have to see the whole picture. You have to remember, we're walking into this budget with $3.5 billion in debt. That's huge. Now, I can tell you there's things that we could do to reduce that deficit and provide funding for schools and for SEPTA. We've got to make some tough choices, and it is about tough choices. And so I really feel like we need to look at the entire infrastructure picture. I don't want to fund SEPTA at the detriment of our roads and bridges. Even in my own district, I have roads and bridges that I'm like, holy moly, it looks like Afghanistan, during the war when you had potholes that could suck up a small car. So we've got to look at the entire picture. We can't just look at SEPTA. We've got to look at the entire statewide infrastructure package.
I certainly understand what you're talking about, but we are a month late at this point with the budget. So there has been time to look at all that.
You are correct.
Why have those conversations not happened? Or if they have happened, why have they not led to some sort of resolution?
So I am not privy to the conversations at this point, but I will tell you that I think the conversations are ongoing, which is very important. But everyone's got to give a little. And I think we're at the point where people aren't willing to give a little, and we've got to be able to.
Who's not willing to give?
I don't know. I really don't know at this point. I think to be fair, Leader Pittman is holding firm that we have to look at transportation as an entire package, not just SEPTA. I recognize that the governor is from Montgomery County, but we've got to look at the statewide implications. And we cannot do what we did previously. The governor took money from the Roads and Bridges Fund to give it to SEPTA. That made a lot of people very upset, rightfully so. At the bigger picture, you've got to look at where we are as a state. We are $3.5 billion in debt. Our budget has doubled in the last 20 years. And is your life better? I look at that and go, whoa, what are we spending money on? We've got to be really careful about spending money on the most critical things that our constituents need. And roads and bridges and SEPTA are definitely up there, but so is education. So it's a balancing act, and we've heard nothing. Literally, we've heard nothing. So we're in Harrisburg, but we've not been recalled. So I think the negotiations are ongoing.
Yeah. I spent some time at a bus stop yesterday, a SEPTA bus stop, where one of the bus routes goes by there and is being discontinued. I know your district, you've got Montgomery County, part of Montgomery County and Berks County. How do the changes that SEPTA is planning, how do they impact your district?
So I have North Wales, I have a train station, and then I have bus service to Pottstown. There will be a slight reduction in the bus service to Pottstown that has been proposed but not implemented. So really, for us, there's going to be very little change. There may be some slowdown on train service as well from North Wales, but I don't have exact specifics at this point. It's been proposed but not implemented.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just curious how that all fits into your district. Are you hearing from people who are worried about it?
I'm hearing from people that are very opposed to increasing SEPTA's funding, and then a little bit from people that are concerned about losing SEPTA, but more that don't want to pay more to SEPTA. So it's
is there somewhere they want the money to go instead? Is there something that they're saying, hey, please spend on this?
Nope. They're just saying SEPTA's got enough. They need to be held accountable for what they've gotten so far and what they're spending it on. I think for some of my constituents, the last CEO's golden parachute is a real sticking point. They are very upset that she received $500,000 for a year after she left her position, because that doesn't happen, and it shouldn't have happened with taxpayer dollars. I also think that one of the concerns, especially in Berks County, is, hey, the governor took money from the Roads and Bridges Fund for rural communities and he didn't pay it back. So we're out and we're now funding SEPTA, but we don't get to use SEPTA. And we don't have, they'd have to drive down to Montgomery County, pick up a bus in Pottstown or pick up a train in North Wales. So there's people that are upset. And so we've got to figure out how to balance everyone's requirements.
And that kind of brings it back to what we started talking about, which is the legislation that you're co-sponsoring. So the oversight that you're suggesting here, that may actually make some of your constituents feel better as well, because
then they would
there
be
would
able
be
to see.
some extra.
Right.
Yeah.
There would be an annual report that says this is what's working well, this is what's not working well. And maybe you should shift from this program, like the SCOPE program and that $7 million, to something else. Maybe it's rail safety or bus safety. The last thing we want to have happen is, for a transit worker to be assaulted at work. That's a huge concern, and it's happening. And that should never happen. They should be able to go and drive the bus, drive the train without fear for their personal safety.
You heard Senator Pennycuick talk about the money a SEPTA CEO got after she left her job. SEPTA is still paying the rest of the contract for former CEO Leslie Richards. That contract was through 2025. The salary was about $440,000. I also reached out to the House Majority Leader's office to see how House Democrats feel about that oversight bill. A spokesperson sent me a statement saying, quote, "The Senate bill merely codifies what SEPTA is already doing to improve efficiencies in operations, but categorically fails to provide the funding needed to prevent catastrophic service cuts. In less than a month, the region will feel the impact of the Senate's inaction. We strongly urge the Senate to get the bill we sent them in June to the governor's desk now." End quote. That conversation with Senator Pennycuick was on Wednesday, July 30th. The previous week, also during this period without a budget, I caught up with State Senator Vincent Hughes from Philadelphia. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Appropriations Committee.
We're here in Philly, but I want to talk to you about what's going on in Harrisburg. This budget is late. It's been late before, but we're coming up on a month. What has taken so long this time?
I think we're still talking, still meeting, still having conversations, still sharing ideas. We have an opportunity to continue the education funding that the court said we have to do. We have an opportunity to pass mass transit funding, which obviously is necessary. The House has passed mass transit funding 4 times. They passed the governor's proposal 4 times.
But what's going on in the Senate?
In the Senate, we've got 23 Democratic senators who are locked in, ready to go, and ready to pass the governor's proposal, which, as I say, passed the House 4 times.
Do you have Republicans who are coming over and joining you on the transit issue at this point?
We are hearing they are, but they've got to force their leadership to get the vote put on the calendar, all right? We can't force leadership, even though we have the 23. They've got to say, because their leadership controls, the Senate Republican leadership controls the calendar. They've got to say, we want to get this done. And the Republican leadership has got to say, okay, it's time to vote it. We're solid, we're strong, we got 23, we're ready to roll. And then I think once there's a broad agreement on stuff, all right, that the process can actually flow relatively quickly.
Well, you talk about quickly. I mean, we're here.
I know.
20-some days late at this point. I mean, people are looking at this and saying, what's going on?
It's very frustrating. We have a situation where the old pressures that used to exist, where folks weren't getting paid and state payments weren't going out, that's not the reality as it used to be, all right? However, we're getting ready to face an issue in the next week where notices will likely go out that payments may be delayed, that should be happening sometime in August to various different service providers, to school districts and what have you. I'm hoping that pressure will move folks to say, let's get back and let's get this thing done.
Let me ask you specifically on transit, because that is something we are going to see an impact fairly soon. I know SEPTA, well, and in less time than that, SEPTA has to actually start preparing to cut those bus schedules. They've got to schedule people for those. That's going to happen in early August. So that's like a week or 2 weeks.
So what we know as a time frame is that by around the 3rd week of August, 23rd, 24th, somewhere around that time frame, that the cuts that SEPTA has told everybody they're going to have to make. They've been very public all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Every state senator in the furthest hinterland of Pennsylvania who doesn't utilize SEPTA system has been informed that somewhere around the 3rd week of August, they will have to implement those cuts. They've started notifying folks now, as the law requires, a 30-day notice, all right? But SEPTA's been telling people this for months, okay?
Do you think people should expect that the transit money that you want isn't all going to come through?
No, I'm going to be hopeful. I've been saying that I think that there's light at the end of the tunnel, all right, that I think it can get achieved. And I'm going to continue to be hopeful, and hopefully sooner rather than later that we all come together and put a final package together that helps people and doesn't hurt people.
In the larger agreement, is there something else that is still a sticking point?
Here's what I know. The governor, House Democrats, Senate Democrats are pretty much in lockstep on everything we want to try to achieve in this budget. The folks who are not being really responsive are the Senate Republicans especially, all right? They've got to step up and say those things that are compelling for them that they want to try to get done. What we know is 42% of the state's economy comes out of the coverage area that SEPTA serves. 42% is in southeastern Pennsylvania. If we're crippled in any way, it doesn't just hurt folks in this region, it hurts people all across Pennsylvania because our regional economy will start to shut down. We can't have that. We can't have that. I'm gonna err on this beautiful Sunday morning. I'm gonna err that that folks will want to eventually get this done. All right. And we'll get it done in a time frame where there'll be no pain for anyone in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, as you know, politics and public policy is like sausage. You don't want to see how it's made.
We're not seeing how it's made.
Well, unfortunately, as I said, we're locked up. We're ready to go, okay? We can do everything that we need to do in a short amount of time. We've got one constituency, one group that is just being relatively slow to this, and they need to feel a little bit more pressure from the public to move the needle.
Okay. Do you have an expectation of timing? I mean,
I'm going to be hopeful. I think it can get done before any pain is felt by the people in Pennsylvania.
You don't think the stress people are feeling is
well?
That
yes, yeah. No, I do.
People are a little stressed out about it.
I think we're all stressed out. But in terms of actual cuts in services,
not getting money,
reduction
or that kind
in
of thing.
funding,
okay.
I'm going to believe that we can get it done before any of that actually goes into.
And you said those notices go out.
I think no. Obviously, SEPTA is starting to inform people. I think that
pre-K providers, I know they were expecting money as well.
Exactly, I think
mid-July.
I think everything is going to resolve itself before some real pain happens across Pennsylvania. That's what I believe. I'm more optimistic this time than in years in the past.
You can find more Battleground Politics on our website, on our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts.